Going on, everybody? 9 o'clock here. Just got to get settled in. We'll get started in just a moment. Mhm. Texts, lots of texts coming in early today. Well, good morning. I'm going to get started. Let's get back over to let's see. I am sharing the screen. Yes, I am. We need to go to this. Let's see who all's on real quick. Little roll call action. Mr. Huggy was the first, instantly on there. Excellent. We got Edward and Jill, Hunter, Heath, Miss Kitty, Leslie. Got a name for you going on out there in the tropics, right? We got to watch old Leslie out there in the tropics. We'll see. Rolling Smoke and Marky Baya, something like that. Marky Baya. I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying it right. And our good buddy Will Woodgate. What's up, Mark? I like that. And good old Delaware Steve, who got me into winter storms more than I already was. And he knows the story there. Anyway, good to see everybody there. Second Orlando check-in. Um, so today's discussion, little morning discussion, season is catching up, and golf activity does look kind of messy, which is better than the alternative. And we're going to look back at some of our Helene field work um, going forward. Let me jump back over here just to ask y'all a question. So when I'm showing the screen like this, can you still see me like in a little corner or anything, or am I just gone and you just hear me? Curious about that, how this whole doing the YouTube through Zoom works. Just want to know if you can still see me because I do not see me on my screen, so I'm assuming that you don't. But I guess we'll find out in a few seconds. Oh, it says yes. Okay. Well, I guess that's good. All right. So then we'll get started. Interesting post here from Dr. Klotzbach. The stats were starting to catch up. And this is important because there was a lot of hemming and hawing when we had that dead period and people were throwing seasonal forecasts under the bus. And there is statistics and there are facts, and those facts are solid. And then there's speculation and misinformation and all of that. And just remember, this is a very important thing. Information by itself is not truth. All right? Facts that are verified are truth, but just plain old information, random stuff is not truth. So we want to get the record straight here as to exactly what's happening. Colorado State University has been at this from Dr. Bill Gray, now passing the torch on to Dr. Phil Klotzbach for more than 30 years. And so where are we? We knew the season was forecast to be very, very busy, and we had that slump there, and everybody was scratching their heads, including me, as what in the world happened, right? So through yesterday, the Atlantic hurricane season is above average now for named storms. And again, these are your facts. Let me get my telestrator going. That'll help to highlight said facts. We have had 12 named storms through yesterday. Now, we'll be up to 13 here with Leslie, right? And the named storm days is increasing already. This is out of date. Um, Hurricane days, everything's above the metric for the long-term average of the last 30 years or so, except for the ACE. We're a little bit behind on ACE, but this is going to jump very quickly over the coming days, and we will be above average on most accounts here because we have Kirk and Leslie um, out there, and they're going to really bump up, especially that ACE score. And that's really important because it shows you the quality of the season. Now, here's another way to look at it, this neat little graph here from Colorado State as well. And I'm going to refresh it just to see, get the latest numbers. The table up here is, short-lived Alberto back in the early part of the season, June 19th to the 20th, 45 knot sustained winds. That was the top, pressure 993, that's the minimum, and it contributed zero 0.8 ACE points. Then the big winner of the year so far for Ace and certainly for the wow factor, making it to category 5 there in July of all months, would be Beryl with a score of 35. Chris was so short-lived it got point 0.2, and on down the list you go. So you have Kirk on here and Leslie. Leslie's just entering the game. So this is really interesting. That's why I use sports analogies. This is like your roster of players. And these are the points that they have been putting up already. These guys are already done. Guys, gals, whatever, you know? But these are the current players. They're still on the field. So these A scores over here are going to keep going up. And here's how it looks like plotted out. We are still lagging just a little bit. We're not over here. We were, but we're not any longer. But that's going to change. We're going to flip it. We use yellow here, and this will start to exceed and get on the outside um, of the climatological norm, which is right here. That's where we should be. So we're just a little bit behind. And this is important because we want to believe in the science, even when it means bad things are going to happen. We want to be able to trust what is being forecast, and it is difficult. The atmosphere is complex, and there was this weird period this year where things were just dead, and a lot of early looks into it suggested that the cap was out there. It was basically warm over warm instead of the cooler air aloft. And I say warm, it's relatively speaking. But we call that the cap, and the atmosphere was essentially capped. There was just too much warm air everywhere, all throughout the air column. That's the simple way to explain it. Now, as we're progressing into fall, the troposphere is cooling the upper part of the atmosphere naturally. And so you still have all that energy down below from the ocean. And now look at what we're getting. So let's go over to the satellite loop and let's point out some statistics. This is the farthest east this late in the season that we've had a hurricane of this intensity. So already Kirk setting records that go back to the 1800s. And I think it's somewhat amusing back when we had Beryl and we were all talking about the records it was setting, how many people came out of the woodwork pointing out that we don't know what the records were a million years ago or back in the age of the dinosaurs. Like, what are you talking about? Of course we don't know that. Like, I don't know, man. Sometimes you wonder, should the internet have been invented, especially social media? Who thought it was a good idea to engage with the entire world? Potentially. You put a post out there on whatever platform it is, and you could potentially engage with everybody else that's on social media if your post went viral, whatever. But anyway, we know this. Okay, we know this. We know that the records only go back so far. Anyhow, so in the modern era, here we go, Kirk setting records, and look at it. It's strengthening again, that eye getting very prevalent. Here's Leslie down here, well on its way to becoming a hurricane. So we're going to do probably, I don't know, 20 to maybe 28 ace points with just Kirk. And Leslie's a tough one. I can't call that one yet. Hard to say. Kirk's going to head on out and follow in this direction, eventually towards the UK and vicinity. Leslie, though, not so sure about it. We got to see how far west it gets. It's still at a pretty low latitude here. Um, don't think it's going to make it all the way over to the US, but there's a tiny, tiny chance it could directly impact the islands, and somewhere up here is Bermuda, about right there. Maybe a tiny chance that this could directly impact Bermuda. But both of these, and this is very important, are going to send out swells, and those will start to impact land areas in the coming days. All right? First with the Caribbean and then elsewhere. I've seen it mentioned already in some of the forecast discussions here in Wilmington, North Carolina. So be on the lookout for that, because the water temperatures, at least from Hatteras all the way around here, are still nice and toasty. And that includes everybody down here. You're going to get out and enjoy the beach. You're going to have big swells coming in over the next week or so, probably longer. And those swells will cause problems. It's about the impacts. People say, oh, it's a fish storm. It's only going to bother the fish. Well, Lorenzo, 2019, I think it was, 4 people are no longer with us because they drowned from swells and rip currents, the swells that cause those rip currents. And Lorenzo was nowhere near the United States. So tell me more, please. I'm waiting on how that's just affecting fish. Last I checked, human beings are not fish. So it does bother me when people just dismiss these things. I think it's disrespectful to the people who lose their lives, and we're just not thinking it through. Not everything is about whether or not these make landfall. So this is going to create the swells, and that's going to be problematic. And for places like the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where it is. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I thought I was doing my update. That's funny. I activated the webcam and it's already in use by Zoom. Anyway, Outer Banks, North Carolina, very vulnerable up there, and these swells are going to just cause more problems there. So anyway, I wanted to hit on that, and I'll touch upon it again in the more concise update later today. But this is what I've been looking at. All right. That's on my mind. Close up here, real quick. This is from Michael Fisher. Who is Michael Fisher? Why would I cite this person? Well, because they know what they're talking about. He does, and that's who I like to cite, people that are on point. Anyway, Michael's post. This is really neat, kind of your unique way using satellite technology to peer through the clouds. It's kind of like an X-ray. This is where I want you to, like, it's not an X-ray, but that's the analogy here, where we can see the structure of the of Leslie. And look at that classic S shape right there is well on its way to becoming a hurricane, and that'll just rack up those ace points very, very quickly. So let's switch gears real quick and let's go back in time just a week. Um, we had many cameras out. Let me see if I can recall all of them. We had one on the Courtney Campbell Causeway. We had one here on Bayshore in Tampa. We had one in Crystal River. We had four in Cedar Key and one in Steinhatchee. We had one, two, three in St. Mark's. Did not do Horseshoe Beach or Keaton Beach. Time was against us. We knew it was going to be dark, and we focused our energy and resources where we had more light and people that we could work with and so forth. That's the reasoning. But I want to look at the one from Bayshore because this is really interesting. The surge forecast down here, I think, was for 5 to 8 feet, something like that. And this is a very popular area. It's a very high-end part of Tampa. As we get through the timeline here, I'll show you. This is the raw nest feed, the archive. These are some pretty pricey houses. A lot of people go jogging through here, and it's a nice little area. I set up camera up here for Ada. Remember Ada 4 years ago? Tropical storm Ada, well offshore, and it flooded Bayshore, and we captured that. We had one up in the marina in St. Petersburg, and we had a camera out on Courtney Campbell, and we've set up a few things ever since then too. But for Helene, I wanted to make sure we did it again. So this is 6:42 in the morning. Traffic's going by. The hurricane is coming. It's strengthening, and you know how it all turned out. So let's just jump ahead to 8 a.m. And now we're starting to see just a little bit of the water starting to pool here over in this lane. It's a divided highway right there, or roadway, whatever. Still some traffic coming by. It's not too bad just yet. In Tampa Bay over here, a little choppy. No big deal, right? So as we move along throughout the day, and we were watching this ourselves, Fox Weather had it on full screen many times. Lots of people watching on YouTube. The water went up and up and up. At this point, Bayshore, I assume was closed. Certainly hope so. And you're starting to get a little bit more splashing and what we call overwash or splash over along that little bit of a seawall there. Nobody out there really jogging, I guess. And there were all kinds of shenanigans, people, and that's a good thing, I guess. I'm not trying to make fun of people, but people, I don't want to say enjoying it because it's a very serious situation, but we saw people on kayaks and just kind of, it's a novelty. Look, it is, it's different. And we saw all that in real time as it happened, and that was interesting. So let's just move along to the early afternoon here, 1 p.m. a week ago. and the water's coming up. We can keep moving along. Let's go to another 2 hours out. This is 3 p.m. and the water keeps coming up. And that is what storm surge is. All right. It is this gradual rise in some locations. And looking, you're starting to get the spill over there. And there's wave action. And the water level just keeps coming up, especially in these bays like this. Some areas, though, it takes longer. Like in Cedar Key, we had cameras there, and certainly Tampa is farther south, but it takes longer for different areas. Like Crystal River, the storm surge was delayed, and then in Steenhatchee, until the wind actually came right up the river. So different areas have different mechanisms to get the storm surge to go up. But in Tampa Bay, the shape of it, it literally just gradually shoves all that water up there. And so as we go through this, and I show you how dramatic things got, it tells us that, one day when you drive the core, if I can get this to click, of a major hurricane, especially one with a large radius of maximum winds, when that core comes right into Tampa Bay, this is going to be a cataclysm. It really will, because we can see the homes now. These are not, I would assume these are all seven figures, at least, right? Uh, they're very expensive. And you think about Tampa and how old the city is. You have the newer, modern, high-end houses here. You've got areas where they are not so modern and high-end. And this was a hurricane that passed well offshore. And that is just, when you see this, it's like, my goodness, the vulnerability of Tampa is extraordinary. And as we just keep going through, the water's coming up, the bay is getting more and more choppy, and we get up here to 7 o'clock. We're getting close to dark, which is always just, that sucks so bad. If these could hit in the daytime, always, that would do us all a big favor. And so now you're getting even a little bit of undulation where the water level is here. You're starting to drive waves just from this body of water. The bay has pretty much come in to bay shore. And then at 8 p.m., it gets even worse. The power starts flickering. We're getting issues with that. Much more of this spray over from these big waves here. And that does a lot of damage. All that spray comes into these trees, into these houses, and that causes problems with electrical and corrosion. And now you're literally getting the waves to come across. I mean, it was just extraordinary to see this happening in real time. And it just kept getting worse. Let's jump ahead to about 10 o'clock, and the water level is even higher. And it's knocking on the door of getting into some of these homes. And then there's some weird flashing going on, I guess, with the street light that's behind the camera or above the camera. Finally, at 11 p.m., the eye is about to make landfall up in Appalachia Bay, but the surge is dragged on. You understand? It's still getting pushed up in there, so the water levels are still going up. And we are now starting to get water into these homes over here. Right there, you can see there's waves and they're coming in to some of these homes. So unless these folks had flood insurance, and hopefully they did, uh, you're going to have millions and millions of dollars of damage down there. And this is just one little peek into it. And by the way, the camera was roughly 8 feet above ground level. The people that set it up, one of our back end team members, Mike, he's a tall dude, and the camera was above as high as he could reach his hands to set it up. And the waves are just underneath the camera. And it's just extraordinary how this played out in real time. And then we get to 1 a.m. and it finally starts to subside, but it's still a pretty high water level there, just underneath the camera by maybe 18 inches. And it's getting into these houses over here. So, as bad as it was, this shows us the day will come because we're apparently in this weird pattern. Hopefully, it'll quit. That the Big Bend of Florida is the target. That one of these is going to bend to the east, a little quicker or whatever, where the center makes landfall between Cedar Key and Tarpon Springs or something, and you drive that right front quadrant right into Tampa Bay, and then the water levels will be more on the level of that. And are we ready for that? Lessons learned here, hopefully, that people will really take these hurricanes seriously in the Tampa Bay area going forward, because this was a very close call. It really was. Speaking of close calls, I want to show you this. Um, you might recall I've talked about, and if you were listening to the stream while we were out there, that my son, my oldest son, was going to have his bachelor party. He's getting married this month. Um, and he's going to have his bachelor party. Nothing crazy. I mean, they're just not like that. Nothing out in Vegas. Not making the Hangover Part 4 with the Sudduth boys. Didn't they do three of them? Anyway, so they went up to the mountains. The plan was they were going to go to Brevard, and they had this big Airbnb. There's going to be several of the guys, and they were going to have basketball and some hiking, and it was like a really amazing looking Airbnb. And they were going to go up. I believe it was Thursday, stay Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and come home Sunday. And they asked me about it early in the week, and I'm like, nope, I wouldn't go. I would just forget it. Anything west of I-77, don't go. And they went anyway. All but one. My one of my sons, Noah, he's like, I'm not gonna go. He listened to me, so he didn't go. So, ironically, in a remarkable twist of fate, the Airbnb host somehow double booked the Airbnb for Thursday night. And so the guys had to stay at another Airbnb Thursday night in Pickens, South Carolina. And then Friday, they were going to go on up and check in when the guest that stayed Thursday night checked out. And so everything transpired exactly as I told them it would. And they got the heck out of Pickens and made their way back through Greenville, Spartanburg, and came on home, and so forth and so on. Um, didn't go to Brevard, obviously. It's in Transylvania County. We know nothing of the condition of the Airbnb. That's all stuff they're handling. But I wanted to show you, this is, at least they listened to me on one account here. So this is my son's dash. He did a really neat time lapse. Let me just go back. This is 7 minutes in. Let me just go back to the beginning at least. Um, you can tell my son likes movies, right? This is from my son Nathan. So he did a cool time lapse following in his dad's footsteps here of documenting everything. So this is their escape from Pickens. This is the Airbnb they just left. And this is what people were dealing with, up in North Carolina too, Eastern Tennessee, trees down, escape routes rolled up. But anyway, let's zoom back up here, zoom ahead to the 7 minute mark or so. At least they listened on this account here, as you'll see. I like how he speeds it up, and then you get to an impact, and then he slows it back down again. Um, they came across this area where water was over the road and next to it, and I'll just let it speak for itself. I was very impressed. Like, all right, at least you went against what I said about not going up there at all, but at least you got this part right. And here it is coming up here in just a moment. I do believe maybe I passed it. Where was it? They came across some water. Oh yeah, there's that down tree. But they came across water over the road and they turned around. I was very impressed with that. And they went back the other way. I'll see if I can find it again or if I somehow missed it. Dun, dun, dun. But they got out of there. They were nice and safe. And they finally did something, I think, in Raleigh, Durham or somewhere with some of their friends. Where was it? I know that they came across flooded road somewhere in here. I'll just do this. This is coming off my Dropbox. Where was that? This is annoying. Yeah, they checked the road. Oh yeah, there we go. There it is. I was too far ahead. My bad. So let's go back 10 seconds or so. And there we go. All right, we're back on track. Thanks for bearing with me. So they come across this, water's flowing, there's some creek or whatever to the right, and they get out and they check, and okay, that's valid. They're all, by the way, in small sedans, hybrids, whatever. They're not driving big pickup trucks. Not that I would condone But look, you can check, and if you walk and it's just up to your ankles and it's not flowing, go right ahead. But be smart about it. Like that person, they're like, all right, we'll check it out. And they went on through there in a higher clearance vehicle. But these guys are in small cars, and they went and checked it out, and it was too deep. They gave it the thumbs down, and they turned around and they went the other way. So good for them. You can see my other son's car there. It's a Hyundai, um, not an Elantra, Sonata, I think it is. And no, you can't be driving that through 6 inches of water. And so they made it back nice and safe. All right. So there's that. Other thing I want to show you related to the field work, then we're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes, get some comments from you guys. Weather data, very important, not just the cameras, but the weather data. This is Cedar Key. We put one of our weather stations with a camera that's with it right there. We being I, because I was by myself at this point, which was just fine, no big deal there. Lots of help out there with other people at Cedar Key itself. The fire chief, when he was done with all his responsibilities, he came and helped me, but I set the weather station up. Easy to just clamp it down, lock everything up, and we were good to go. And let me just give you a reference as to exactly where this is in Cedar Key. We don't need this anymore. I guess I do actually. So this is on one of the bridges that comes into Cedar Key, and the weather station was right there, right in there. Okay, not too far from the low-key hideaway where we had a camera. So I wanted to show you this. The wind data, I started it at about 5 o'clock, and I got everything running in the parking lot of where this playground is at the beach. Got it all running, and then all I got to do is jump out and clamp it down, and I'm good to go. So let's just scroll through, and it's all set up. This is now 6 o'clock. The 1 minute average is 25, the gust is 30. That's what these numbers are. All these others, don't worry about those. So this is your 1 minute average. This is your peak gust during that minute. So we move along and just get on into the evening. Um, you do get some sustained 30 gusting to 44. There's a 43 in there. There's a 46, so 34 miles per hour gusting to 36. None of these are tropical storm force sustained yet. And that's really important to note. This is getting close. 36 gusting to 45, right? There's a 36 gusting to 48, 37. We're just not seeing any sustained. There's one finally, 39 gusting to 55. And I was looking through all this. We still need to chart this. I'm going to work on that soon. It's just better than looking at a table. There's another 39. There's a 40s, and we're getting in the 40s. So now we're in sustained tropical storm force wind for 3 minutes. The wind never fell below, on an average there, of 40. And that's important. And it seems low, right? But if you stand out where the average wind is 40 miles per hour, 41 for that 1 minute, and then the peak gusts is in the 50s, stick your head out the window if you can do so as a passenger in a car where the driver's going 40 for 3 minutes straight and tell me how you like that. That's the force of the wind that just blows that water in there, and that's nothing. You understand? That's like, but when you do that over a huge area, like Helene was doing with its giant wind field, hundreds of miles across, that then becomes all the energy put into the ocean, the Gulf in this case, over a very wide area. So this data, even though it's low, because this was not near the core, is very, very important. And let's jump up here. 42 gusting to 64, 45 gusting to 56. So there's several minutes in here near the peak conditions of highest wind at Cedar Key where we got into the 40s, mid 40s with the sustained gust into the 50s. But this validates what we saw with that wind field and how large it was. And this helps to explain why the storm surge got so high in Tampa Bay. You don't have to have a hurricane at all to create a huge surge. The size of the tropical cyclone and its wind field absolutely makes a difference here. And this proves that. So once we chart this and I blend it into a nice presentation, this will be very, very helpful at conferences next year, especially when we look at the gradual rise up, and then the peak, and then the decline of the wind field there. No hurricane force wind gusts from us. And our weather station was about 4 meters or 12 feet above the water, above the ground, the marsh, whatever. University of Florida, right at the beach, had their tall wind tower at 10 meters. And I think they did record some hurricane force gusts, which would make sense because their anemometer was higher and it was exposed to the direct beachfront. So yeah, that's a look back at everything, some data for you, and other stuff. So let's jump over on the chat and see what folks are saying and talking about. Great information. Thank you, Galactus55. Yeah, the worst flooding in Tampa. That's got to be um, the worst we've seen since 1921, maybe. Yep. Um, yeah, suppressing air versus. Yep. So Steve brings up a good point about the future of the season. So we are going to be going into a less favorable MJO overall. Oh, and I didn't even really address the part about the Gulf being messy. So let's pop up a tropical tidbits forecast models real quick. Yeah, I kind of forgot that part. So we know all about the 850 chart. Let's actually broaden this out. This will really help to prove my point. Hurricane, let's use a color that stands out, shall we? Hurricane, tropical storm, that's what we look for. That's not happening over here. And if we run this out to the next 5 days, go back to the Western Atlantic because it just makes it a better map extent for us. Nothing ever bundles over there. And you can see our traffic going by to the east. But out to the next 5 days, everything is loose and sprawling and not concentrated. But that still doesn't mean nothing's happening. You're going to churn up the water out here. There will be some onshore flow, some more coastal flooding, and there will be a lot of heavy rain. So this says impacts, but not in the way of strong wind or deep low pressure or anything like that. In fact, if we just run this out all the way to the next week, it stretches itself out and really presents a big rain problem across the peninsula of Florida. Fun times, right? Yeah, not really. So, um, but later on, just to kind of prove a point here, and this is where it's nice because I can throw context into it and not just drop a 384-hour image and then run away. Don't you hate it when people do that? So we run this out. Steve, Delaware Steve, there was talking about it's not real favorable right now, but it looks like we could have a Kelvin wave. So the MJO is like a wider, basin-wide, favorable window. A Kelvin wave is a much shorter, but pretty potent favorable window. I've often said it's like a shot of Red Bull. So let's look at the 850 chart and we go out in time and we get some more activity trying to brew up towards the 19th. And these are your peaks and valleys that you get, and then peaks again in October. Very typical in a busy season. So right now, look at the 200 millibar pattern, and this is owed to what Steve was talking about. It's not very favorable. The anticyclone is displaced over to the east over here, and lots of strong upper level troughing, and our system is just going to get kind of stretched out. But if we move this out into time, it's only 2 weeks out. Now we get into a much more favorable pattern, a little bit of that Kelvin wave activity, and just the maybe some MJO in there, but it doesn't. It's just a big upper level anticyclone that comes into play towards the end of the month, or at least the last third there, finishing the second third. But you see what happens, it evolves. You get this big sprawling area of high pressure, and it starts to expand and get larger. So we got to watch for that. Absolutely. We are not finished by a long shot, but at least the system in the Gulf for now, a rainmaker, and rain is absolutely an impact, of course, but nothing that we're going to have to worry about in terms of something getting too concentrated. All right. So why do we see the tops of trees that look like they are being beat by the wind, but the ground isn't having the same effects? Yep, because the trees, more exposed up there, and the air is moving faster at the top. And then at the ground, not so much, but sometimes you do get these downbursts, and you can see the wind affecting the ground. Is pretty interesting. Uh, and being in the eye wall of these things, you see that very often, believe me. Um, what else? Just seeing what's happening. How many people are tuned in Doesn't even, I can't, oh, 87. Good to see you, folks. Hey, it's like talking to a room full of 87 people. I appreciate it. Um, let's see, anything else before I let you go? Because I have got to prepare for a Zoom with Clemson University later. We're going to talk about some new stuff we're working on. So I got to let you go here in just a moment. Over on our Discord, I don't want to ignore the folks there. Any questions? Um, Interesting. Karen said she did not get notified again. So we don't have push notifications, except Patreon does. Discord should notify you, and YouTube. This is the importance of enabling all notifications. So we'll work with Karen to get that straightened out, definitely. We are working on setting up, just so you guys know, a text notification system with a third party out of Arizona, a good friend of mine I've known for like 20 years. We've been gradually getting this thing ready, and we might launch it here in the next week or so. I talked about it with our patrons several weeks ago. Um, so maybe we could do that and then have a version for our supporters and then a public version. We'll see. I think that'd be neat. You know, you text like the word hurricane track to a certain phone number, and when I post something on the back end, you'll get a notification. Like when everybody knows what that is. Like you go to Texas Roadhouse and they notify you that your table's ready or whatever. We could do that. Hey, we got a new video. Anyway, good stuff. All right. I'm gonna wrap things up. Let's stop the screen share. Get back to me. Appreciate you tuning in. This is a good way to just kind of start the day off of things that I'm looking at. You know, the one problem though, if I do text notifications, it wouldn't be two-way. That's right. Because I don't want to look at my phone and have 85 text messages. The guy that's helping me, his name is Tom. We'll sort it all out. It would be one way, me telling you, we're doing something. We just put up a cam. Check out cam 3. We're getting ready to go live. I don't know. Sometimes I think we have too many notifications in our lives, but it's something we're looking at. All right, let's get rid of that. You guys have a good rest of your morning, and I'll be back in the afternoon with the regular and more concise version of this video update. And we'll see what the model guidance and whatnot shows by then, and we'll keep on tracking. All right. I am Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. Thanks for tuning in. See you later today on the Outlook and Discussion.